Hello again, it's Michael Rambaran from HVAC Technologies USA, where we provide intelligent HVAC solutions. Today we're going to look at selecting and pricing fans. It's an important part of what we do in selling fans. We have to make sure that our fans that we provide match the specified item, or that when we're working with engineers, we specify the correct product for the application. So it's important, and we're going to pick this up where we left off in terms of using cross-reference charts for our for finding the correct model fan. So we're going to use the same job zero deck design that we used in order to price up this particular project. And when we're looking at the fan that we're going to price up, we need to look at the fan schedule. It's important that you look at the model and make, that is the Greenheck, in this case Greenheck model GB, BSQ, SP, and another fan here that's SP. Also very important to look at the notes. It tells you to provide the highest efficiency motors, provide inverted duty rated motor and variable frequency drives where that applies. And if you look at the remarks here, that number 2 doesn't really apply to any of these fans. It tells you, unless otherwise noted, locate all fan motor starters, VFDs, in close proximity to its respective fan where fans are mounted. Just tells you some instructions in terms of mounting fans. And it also tells you a little bit about the fan for note number 4, especially on EF number 1. You see note number 4 is indicated there. Provide the following: motor with thermal overload. It has to be UL listed, prefabricated aluminum roof curb. That's going to be important. With a damper tray, that's important. So when we're pricing up our fan, we have to make sure that we cover these items. 12-inch high curb, mounted and wired 3R disconnect with flex conduit, motorized damper with end switch. And it tells us here that we have to match the fan motor voltage, curb seal, aluminum birch screen, stainless steel hardware, hinged cap with cables, locking hasp, extended lube lines, grip notch belts, wiring pigtails, belt tensioner, rotary, and spare belts. So that's a lot of notes that applies to that fan. So it's important that we read the notes. If we don't read the notes, we're going to misprice our fans. So it's really important for us to look at the fan, the model, performance, but also read the notes. In this case, where it says note number 5, you can see applies to EF number 2. And it says for EF number 2, provide the following. It's a horizontal ceiling mount, motor position 3, axis position 9, mounted and wired disconnect switch with flex conduit, belt guard, inlet and outlet flanges, inlet and outlet flex connections. And it says they want you to insulate the housing, have extended lube lines, a shaft seal with rub ring, spare belts, and a set of 4 spring isolators. So sometimes our software will be able to provide us some of these options. If it doesn't, then we have to price it up separately. But it's important that, once again, read the notes that apply to the fan, because it's not just about matching the model and performance, but it's also about providing features that are specified, so that way when the contractor or we submit to the engineer for approval, it is not going to be a problem getting approved based on the fact that we left out something. And here we say note number 6, provide the following: a UL rated fan, solid state speed control, motion detector, decorative grill, isolation kit, propylene wheel material, rectangular, hooded wall cap, and it has to be an Energy Star rated fan. So the options we're most likely going to be providing here is speed control, decorative grill, wall cap, and anything that we're not providing, we have to clearly state in the proposal. If we're not providing something, we need to let the contractor know. Or if we're not providing that item, we can go online and buy that accessory from a different source, maybe a supply house. And like this motion detector, we might be able to buy from a supply house, or just tell the contractor we're not providing that, and this may fall in the category of or under the ATC, or the automatic temperature control contractor's contract anyway. All right, so now you're aware of what's important on this schedule. It's model number, it's performance, type of fan, obviously, the horsepower is important, the voltage is important, and the notes are important, the notes for each type of fan. So let's get started on actually pricing fans up. I think it's important too, and maybe we should take a little reprieve from actually getting started, but also take a look at Google and say, well, what is a Greenheck GB fan? I have no idea. If you don't know what it is, you really should go and take a look. So that way you become quite knowledgeable on what models correspond to what type of fan and also what that fan looks like. So when you're looking at the fan that we're pricing up, if those fans look similar, at least you're confident that you're pricing up the right item. So let's take a look at the models G and GB from Greenheck. That's the models that we're going to be using Carnes today to match. So if you look at the models, it's a G and GB. It's a centrifugal roof downblast exhaust fan. It's for general ventilation, light contaminants, variable volume fans if we need to. And you'll see in here there's a Varigreen motor for some of the direct drive fans. That's really an ECM motor. So at least we know what the fan looks like. It's a roof fan. You'll see the housing here. You'll see the curb cap there. And then when you look inside the fan, you'll see what's in there. There's a motor. There's a squirrel cage. There's the blower wheel. So it's important for us to understand. In this case, you can identify this is the direct drive. That means the shaft is running directly into the blower, and that the speed of the fan is really determined by the speed of the motor. We can adjust the speed of the fan by a speed controller on the motor, and that in essence slows down or speeds up the fan. With a belt drive fan, the motor might be a 1750 RPM motor or a 3300 RPM motor, 3500 RPM motor, but really the tension in the belt is adjustable, so that way the motor is constant speed, but you can adjust this tension in the belt so it slips around this pulley, and the fan can either be slowed or sped up based on the requirements during balancing. There's actually a belt tensioning device that you use to either loosen the belt or make that belt tighter. And in general, the tighter the belt, the faster the fan, up until it reaches the RPM of the motor. So it's important for us to understand the difference here between direct drive and belt drive. Okay, so at least we have an idea what we're looking at, and we can go backwards and say, all right, we have a Greenheck GB there, but now we know the other one is a Greenheck BSQ, which in the nomenclature it's belt square. So we can take a look at a BSQ or an SQ model. And for Greenheck, the BSQ and SQ models are square inline fans, or otherwise known as duct blowers. So there's centrifugal inline fans, SQ being the direct drive model, and BSQ being the belt drive model. And again, you here to see the same relationship, except it's on its side, that the direct drive is directly coupled to the blower wheel, so that the speed of the motor equals the speed of the wheel. In this case, it's a belt drive motor with the motor on the exterior part of the housing, and that's connected by a belt and pulley system, and the speed of the fan is determined by the tension of that belt. So that you know exactly what a SQ and a BSQ fan is. It's important too to understand the features, and we'll go over that when we really look at the Carnes fan. So that's BSQ model. So it's incumbent upon everyone to really look through models and say, well, what is it that I can learn in order to become a better pricer, I guess. If you want to price up the fans, it's called pricing up fans. So we look at the Greenheck SP. It's really a cabinet fan, centrifugal ceiling and cabinet exhaust fans. Typically what you see in a bathroom or a small storage area. So that bathroom, you're usually looking at the grill. You hear the noise of the fan when you put on the switch, which everybody's trying to make quiet, or at least they should. And then this is a CSP or a cabinet fan. Similar setup, except it's a cabinet fan. It's an inline fan that goes in the ceiling, and you have a variety of other options with that cabinet. So it's incumbent upon all of us to become as familiar with each type of model and how we match up. Now, from our previous video using the cross-reference charts, we were able to look at the Carnes or ASX model that matches with the Greenheck model. So in that case, in the cross-reference chart video, we said, all right, the GB we matched up with the VEBK. It's a roof exhaust fan, spun aluminum, belt drive. We said that the SP fan is a standard ceiling fan, VCDD or VCDK, the ASX or Carnes model, and the BSQ fan you see right here is in the inline square belt driven category, and that inlet square belt driven category model number for a Carnes or ASX is VIBK. So that brings us up to speed on where we are right now. So let's take a look and kind of gives you some insight on what fans look like. So let's take a look at how we price this up. So we want to go back to our web page, and then we go to manufacturers. We can click on the manufacturers, which brings up our manufacturers, and we click on Carnes, and that brings up the Carnes unit, the Carnes website. Right, so they have some notices and announcements that they're putting there. So let's take a look and go to their selection software. We had Carnes Complete, which is a selection software that's been developed by Carnes in order to price up their products. So we'll hit Carnes Complete here. So once we get to Carnes Complete, we can then type in the login, the user ID, and the password. And if you need the password, just give me a call, and we can be able to see, either if you're a guest looking at this video, or you're a salesperson looking at this video, just give me a call. We'll be able to give you the password. Or if you're a guest, we can set up an account for you. You can see it says Create Guest Account here. We can set up an account for you. That way you can go in and when you're designing a job, and that's really for design engineers, go in and take a look at how the Carnes program works. So here we are. We're in a new job. We want to be able to, it brings us to this page which kind of lists the jobs we've already priced up. So we want to start a new job. Let's take a look at this page a little bit. There are jobs, selections, pricing, news, and user maintenance on this sheet. There's also in the selections tab, which is where we're going to start, there's manual selection if we already know the model numbers and we know exactly what the performance is. There's VAV select, fan select, and humidifier select. So when in this case, we're using the fan select program, and what we want to do is just click on that fan select program. That brings us to this page. We have fan powered, gravity. We have tools that we can use to calculate static pressure, power, flow rate, RPM, and then it tells us about unit of measure. So we want all these fans are fan powered units. That means they have a motor in the fan. So let's click on fan powered and see where it brings us. The nice thing about the program, and the reason I told you to really go and look and see what the fans look like, is that when we put in a model, in this case, the model essentially brings up a picture and we have an idea of what that fan looks like. So we know from using our cross-reference chart that that model GB fan that we were looking at from the drawings, model GB fan, essentially is a downblast fan. And we're going to slide this out to the right here, and we'll put that in, and we'll take a look at what comes up in the program. So for us, we know from our cross-reference video, it's a VEBK fan. So we can click on that, type in the letters, and your model comes back. And there you go, a nice picture of the fan. It looks very similar to what we saw in the Greenheck catalog, and it is the match that's provided by Carnes for the Greenheck GB fan, and it gives you a description here: a spun aluminum downblast centrifugal belt drive powered ventilator. That's a lot to say in one sentence, in one breath. So let's take a look at our schedule, and this is how we're going to start pricing up this fan. So once we pull up the right model, we're going to start pricing up the fan. We need to know the flow rate. And as we know, flow rate is measured in CFM for our cases. For all our friends in the metric world, it's in liters per second. But for us, it's in cubic feet per minute. So let's take a look at that schedule again. And I'm going to make this, minimize that so we can look at both of these screens together. Okay. So we know our flow rate is, in this case, cubic feet per minute is 300 CFM. So we're going to type that in, 300 CFM. Okay, and we know that our static pressures in inches of water water gauge or water column matches what they have here, so we know our static pressure here is going to be 0.25. So when you enter this, really the only two criteria that you need to enter, unless you're working at different elevations or temperatures. We just did a job for a chemical plant where the temperatures in the chemical plant were 120 degrees, so these temperatures were quite elevated, so we're able to switch the temperature conditions and also the elevation. If your fan is elevated, if it's on a roof of a 70-story building, you need to use the right elevation. Now, why is that? Because the density of air is different at 200 feet elevation versus 0 feet elevation. So your fan operates on a different part of the fan curve. So it's important to let the program know that. So once we get to this point where we entered the CFM range and we entered the static pressure, we can hit find sizes, and the program generates a variety of different sizes for us, so that way we can select a particular unit. Okay, so what are we really looking for when we're selecting a unit? What are we looking for? What's important? Well, when we're looking at the fan schedule, the CFM is important. That's the number one criteria for that fan. How much air is it going to move? Number two is the static pressure, because the performance of the fan is going to be different at different static pressures. And number three, generally the next most important component is the motor horsepower. Generally, these general exhaust fans are running 24/7 or somewhere close to that. So it's important that we match up the horsepower that's shown on the schedule, because the engineer is going to be going through it in that particular sequence. You're going to look, did you match a CFM? Did you match a static pressure? Did you match a horsepower? So if those three things match, you're in a location on a fan where the engineer says, hey, that looks good. So let's take a look at what we have on the schedule for that fan. We know that the CFM matches, the static pressure matches, and the horsepower matches. The next important item is really the fan RPM. Well, how fast is that fan operating? How fast is that fan moving? So in this case, the RPM of that fan is 799. It's a belt drive fan, and I can look at my RPM ranges here, right? So my RPM ranges go from 1981 to all the way down to 567. While this is important, what does the engineer say? He also thinks that it's important the noise or the sounds of the fan is stated in his schedule. So if he thinks that's important, we really should take a look at that and say, well, maybe this engineer wants a quiet fan. And when we look at sounds, we are able to tell. In this case, it's a 2.2 sound. That's a measurement of sound. So we can have to go up and down our chart here and say, oh, well, for this quarter horsepower motor, our sound level is 9. The engineer might reject a fan based on that. We matched up on everything else, but we also have other models that are fairly low. The RPM here is 722. The RPM in the schedule is 799. There is a difference in the motor size, and we may be able to take care of that by selecting a quarter horsepower motor in order for us to match the scheduled motor horsepower. So let's select this VEBK 10, and if you look at the model, I mean, it's a Greenheck 101-4, so it's a similar model with the VEBK number 10, and that 10 inches is really talks about the diameter of the fan wheel. In this case, it's 10 inches. Okay. One other step in looking at the fan is taking a look at the fan curve. Well, how does that help us? We want to make sure, and I'll talk a little bit about that with fan curve. So take a look at the fan curve and see where the fan is operating. Typically, this range in here where the fan system curve, in this case, when we look at a fan curve, we're looking at the system, which is the static pressure versus flow, and versus the system curve, which is the green line. When our intersection of those two lines occurs in this region, we're generally in a good location for the fan. In this case, the brake horsepower is 0.03. It's selected a 1.6 horsepower motor, and we'll see if we can go with a 1/4 horsepower motor, but in this case it's providing us an initial selection of 1.6 horsepower. And we look at our zone level, it's 2.0. It's less than what's on the schedule, so when the engineer is looking at this, he'll be quite happy. our Carnes model number is a VEBK10K1. So I think this is not a bad part of the curve. I certainly would like it to be a little bit to the right of that. But I think our static pressure, if we're in this area where the system curve versus the static pressure flow curve intersects in this location, we're in an okay spot. All right, so we want to be able to close that curve and then hit save. Okay, so we hit save for that fan. Essentially what you'll see that comes up is a variety of different features of or standard features of the fan, and that we can select. So we want to take, as we said, careful notice of what notes are provided here, 1, 3, and 4 for green heck fan. So it's 1, 3, and 4. Number 3 really talks about the installation of the fans. We don't necessarily have to be as concerned about that, but we also have note number 4, which had all of this information. So we're going to need this information when we're pricing up the fan. So let's take a look at, and we'll zoom in a little bit here to make sure that we're clear on what's being what we're using. Okay, are all the accessories. All right, so we want to make sure that the fan is tagged properly. So it's J. We know it's quantity 1, right? So then we go to the tag, which is J.EF. Well, let's put that in caps, so it looks EF-1. Okay, we'll put that, and we'll say use that as an accessory. The program already fills in these sizes, the things from the selection, which is good, so we don't have to do that. So we're looking at this model. We already know it's a size 10, so we can just hit the minus sign. It'll close that up. I'm going to hit a 1/4 horsepower here, and it may allow us to do that or not. We won't know that until we price it at the factory. But the schedule says it wants a 1/4 horsepower motor, and the engineer will generally request that we match what's on the schedule. We know that the range is 1. The program automatically selects that for us, and we need to look at the power here. So we know that the voltage and the phase is 115 volt single phase. Okay, the program already selected that for us. We have a variety of voltages that are available if that volt is not selected properly. Now, when you're looking at the motors, you have a variety of different components here. One is an ODP motor, which is an open drip proof motor, which is fairly standard. That's generally your first choice. Unless the schedule or the notes tell you any differently, I would stick to that. So why don't we just go with an open drip proof? We can do 2-speed motors, 2-winding ODP. We can do a totally enclosed fan, which in the case for if you're doing a restaurant exhaust or some sort of exhaust that requires isolation of the fan motor from the air that it's exhausting, the totally enclosed fan is appropriate. And then you have the explosion proof fan, and that's certainly if you're in a chemical plant or some scenario where you're concerned that the sparks in the motor, because every motor has a little bit of spark when it starts, may cause an explosion. So it's important that we understand what it is we're pricing up. So because this is just a general ventilation fan, we'll select ODP. Okay. Now when we take a look at this, whether it's a non-listed or a UL listed fan, most of the time I would want to go with a UL listed fan, and also the schedule says it wants, on the notes here, it says it wants a UL listed fan, so I would go with that. It also tells you that the material is aluminum, which is a standard material for this fan. We can do aluminum with a spun one-piece cover, which is more expensive, but it doesn't tell us that we need that, so we're going to go with the standard on this. You can also select a finish on the fan. So it tells you can have an arc finish, a mill finish, a prime coat, where the factory provides a prime coat on the fan, an anti-condensate coating, or a Herosite coating. So in this case, most of the times you're going to be looking for a mill finish on the fan, unless it tells you something differently here. So when I look at the notes, it's not telling me anything different. So let's just select mill finish. And by the way, we should also be looking at the specifications on these fans, because in the written specifications you might have requirements for the fan that are not shown on the schedule or the notes. Now this engineer was fairly clear on the notes part of his schedule, but we should look at the specifications, and we'll have to do that on another part of the video, because that'll take a little too long. Okay. Now it does tell us here a bunch of things for the wheel construction is standard, but it tells us that it wants, if we read this again, it's a UL listed fan. We've already done that. Prefab aluminum curb, we'll get to that with a damper tray. Mounted and wire NEMA 3R disconnect, we'll get to that. Motorized damper, we'll get to that in the accessories. Match fan motor voltage, we already did that. A curb seal, we already have that as a standard feature. An aluminum bird screen, hinge cap with cables, locking hatch, but it says here extended lube lines, right? So we're going to do extended lube lines, and it also tells us we need a belt tensioner. So we have standard construction with extended lube lines and a belt tensioner, so we can fill all of those components. So let's cross that off as we have them, which is great. We can always cross off the items as we match it, right? So we already have the standard motor is thermal overload. All right, we've already matched that. We've already matched that. We've already matched that. We'll get to the curb and all these other things, but we've already matched the extended lube lines, the belt tensioner. So we're going to provide that. Okay. It also says here we need a hinge cap. So in our next selection, it says a standard curb cap or a hinge cap. We're going to select a hinge cap. And it also says here, so we'll cross this off, hinge cap. And it also says here wired NEMA 3R disconnect. And what do we have here? A NEMA 3R disconnect. And when it's on this particular screen before you get to the accessories, that means it's already wired by the factory. If we do it as an accessory, it is shipped loose. So it's a NEMA 3R disconnect. We'll select that. So once we have all of the items selected, the screen, the standard, sorry, we missed that one. The standard galvanized is the standard screen that's provided with the fan. In this case, the unit or the schedule is asking us for something else. It's asking us for an aluminum bird screen. So we're going to go with the aluminum. We can have aluminum, galvanized, stainless steel, or insect screen, or stainless steel bird screen. So we're going to go with the aluminum aluminum screen. So there you go. All your components are selected. We're going to hit save here. That saves the model. We should have created a new job name. We did not, but we're going to create it now as Zero Deck. Okay, Zero Deck Design. Okay, and we're going to say hit create new job. So once we hit that save button, it should bring up the accessories page, which it does. And here, whatever else is shown in the notes, we can provide in the accessory. So it tells us we need a 12-inch high curb, aluminum curb. So why don't we just go with take a look at curbs. Let's take a look on this page and see where we have curbs. There's a variety of different curbs. You have standard curbs here. So you got to hit the plus button if you want to see options. Okay, so it gives us options here. It says galvanized is material. We may have to ask the factory to provide us an aluminum curb, because in this case it does not provide that, but the factory may have that as an option. Okay, we can hit the plus sign here, and we can hit a 12-inch curb, and now we have a 12-inch curb. Now the materials galvanized are standard, but we're going to need to check with the factory and have them give us an option to provide an aluminum curb. All right, let's take a look at that. Yep, aluminum roof curb with a damper tray. All right, so the standard curb is there. We're also going to take a look at what we need. We need a wire 3R disconnect. We already did that. That's fine. We need a horizontal damper. Okay, so we can click on that. We want to click on the plus sign because we're going to need to have it. We're going to need to have that automatic or motorized. In this case, it tells us we need a motorized damper. Right, so we have here motorized damper that's shown here in the notes. The next item, we already selected disconnect, so be careful not to select the disconnect on the first page and then select it on the second page, because if you do that, you're going to have two disconnects that are going to show up. You've now driven up your price, and you definitely don't want to do that. Okay, so let's go down our list of accessories here and see what else we can provide. Hinge curb cap adapters. We are already providing a hinge curb cap. We don't need any adapters, and we can provide a thermostat. This unit can be provided with a thermostat in order to bring the unit on or turn it off. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have so far. We know the motor has a thermal overload. We've selected a roof curb that's here, right? We selected that roof curb. We've already have the damper. It's 12-inch high. We did the disconnect. We are providing a motorized damper, no problem. The voltage, we've already done that. The curb seal, part of the standard construction, we provided an aluminum birch screen. We already have stainless steel hardware. We provided a hinged cap with cables. Locking hasp, I'm going to have to take a look at the factory and see if they have that. It's a normal, it's not an abnormal thing to have a locking hasp. What is that? That means that once you have that curb cap that can be hinged, you want to lock it down. So we're going to ask the factory about that and see if we can provide that particular item as an accessory. So once we've selected the accessories that are part of the program, we say Save Accessories. And then you'll notice that it goes through a saving function, and the fan comes up here at the bottom of the screen. So if you take a look at this, the fan is priced up. It gives me the options that we've provided, and what we want to do then is hit the pricing and submittal button. You'll notice that everything is red and everything is zero, and that'd be great if everything could be priced up at zero. We'd win a lot of jobs, but we'd make no money. So we need to hit the price at factory button. So once we hit the price at factory button, it'll give us a price. But before we do that, we have to put in a zip code. Why do you need a zip code? You need a zip code because we need to calculate the freight. So once we enter the zip code, in this case we'll put in Yonkers 10604, and then we hit price at factory, because now we'll have the price for the equipment and the price for the shipping. So once you hit price at factory, we'll notice that something came up here with the damper, JDHAM damper, and it's in red. Well, the fan priced up properly, but the vent damper did not price up properly. So let's go back and take a look at that in the selection program, and you'll notice I can click on that and I can say edit line item. If it's in red on a line item that cannot be edited, and generally when you do fan select you can't edit the accessories, you can edit the line item, which is a fan, and you hit edit line item, here it'll bring up the PID cannot be edited, edit the main PID. In this case the main PID is the fan itself. We hit edit. Alright, and everything seems okay, but we'll go back, we'll say update, and we'll go back to the accessories page and we'll see what's going on there. So if we click the accessory page, this is the accessory that's giving us a problem. It's giving us a 12 by 12. It's saying motorized control, mill finish, options. Oh, we forgot to put in the voltage of the motor. Unbelievable. Now the engineer's got to confirm this voltage, and when we're doing a submittal, the submittal will tell us what voltage it is. But remember, the specification on the notes calls for 115 volt motor within motor end switch. So we're going to select this one for now. So in looking at the pricing, if you have a red category that comes up there, or a red sign that comes up, you have to go back to the unit. So once I've saved it again, everything's in red again, nothing's priced up, I have my zip code in there. We hit price at factory, and as you can see, all items have been cleared. So we have a price for this particular fan, which is $872, and the billing with freight is $1,019. So that's what. Notice that because we put in the zip code, we have the item plus freight. So once we have this screen, we can go on to the next fan. We can go back to selections, and we can do selections for the VIBK fan and the VCDD fan, the cabinet fan. But I hope that this was helpful in taking you through the process and looking at the job and looking at pricing up fans. When you're complete with this, you can hit the View Submittal button also. Once you hit the View Submittal button, you'll bring up a PDF file, and that PDF file will show exactly what you selected with all the options, and all the accessories. It gives you the standard features, options, and accessories for that particular fan. It gives you the performance data. It also gives you the dimensional data. So if I'm sending this to an engineer for an engineering selection, or I'm sending it to a contractor for approval, all the information for that fan that is relevant is on this particular sheet. So it's important that you take a look at this sheet and make sure you have everything covered, and that way you're clear on the fact that you're pricing up something correctly also. The next tab is called the Print Job tab. Now, if you look at the Print Job tab, I have a variety of different items here that I can select. The Print Job header, the Billing Worksheet, Print Product Line Summary, and Print Schedule, and then Print Submittals. So when I'm complete in pricing a job, I want to print up a job summary file that shows all the fans. I can click on all of these, check all the boxes, and hit OK. And then the program generates, and this is a nice feature, the program generates a full file for this job. So I have a cover page there, I have a product line summary. So if on this job, if I had energy recovery, fire dampers, diffusers, it gives me a line-by-line summary for each product type. This is very nice too, because when we send out our pricing, we'll send out by product type. It gives me a billing worksheet. I know exactly what my freight is. I know exactly what my total cost is for the job, base equipment plus freight. And then it gives me a schedule of the items I'm providing. So I can use this as a quick reference when I'm doing my proposal. And then it generates a submittal for that particular fan. So I suggest that when you do a job, if you have multiple types of fans and you have multiple selections, this tab at the bottom here is an important tab when we're reviewing the job, because in order for us to review the job and make sure it's priced properly, this Print Job tab with all these boxes checked is important for us to review the job. Okay, so I'm going to cancel that for now. So those are all the features of the software for that particular fan. I hope that this was helpful. Essentially, it's important for you to understand the pricing tool in order to price jobs correctly. So this was part 1 of this series. I'm going to do part 2, and you can take a look at that, and we'll cover another model. And then in part 2 also we'll cover how do I generate a proposal from my fan selections. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you again. This is Michael Rambaran from HVAC Technologies USA. Have a great afternoon.